Exposed: How a Billionaire's Arrogant Son, 22, faced transformation after marrying his maid, 18. Craig Johnson stood at the sprawling balcony of his family's mansion, the city's skyline stretching endlessly before him, like a glimmering backdrop for his seemingly perfect life. Beneath the surface, however, lay a dull ache, a yearning for something more than silk sheets and extravagant parties. He watched his peers glide effortlessly from one glittering gala to the next, lost in the allure of their privileged existence. Yet, all Craig felt was an overwhelming sense of emptiness. That was until he met Anna. She was just 18, a maid working for his family, with calloused hands that whispered tales of perseverance and grit. Their worlds collided one fateful afternoon as they stumbled into one another while carrying an armful of laundry. The touch of her skin sent a spark through Craig, awakening something inside him that he'd buried beneath layers of entitlement. For her part, Anna was taken aback by the intensity in his eyes, a warmth she had never encountered in the cold, opulent halls of the estate. As they exchanged awkward smiles and shared brief, stolen glances, an unspoken understanding began to blossom between them. She could sense the weight of societal expectations upon him, just as surely as he saw the light in her eyes, fueled by dreams that reached far beyond the manicured lawns of their affluent surroundings. Their connection was magnetic, yet neither dared to voice the soft pull of attraction that hummed between them. They navigated their days in secret meetings tucked away in quiet corners of the estate, moments filled with laughter and stolen kisses that felt like the sweetest rebellion. But the whispers of judgment hung thick in the air. Craig's family, with their towering standards and outdated beliefs, would never accept a union between their son and a maid. The clash of their worlds seemed almost insurmountable. Yet for the first time in his life, Craig felt alive, invigorated by love that transcended everything he had known before. It spurred him to romanticize the idea of breaking free from the gilded cage that had confined him. One night, in a moment of impulsiveness fueled by love and rebellion, he proposed. "Let's get married," he breathed, excitement sparking in his chest. Anna's face lit up, but uncertainty flickered behind her eyes. Could she bear the scrutiny that would inevitably follow? Then came the fallout. Their relationship came under intense fire as Craig's family uncovered their secret. Disappointment and rage erupted like a storm, threatening to drown any hope they had dreamt up. Standing at a crossroads, Craig felt the pressure mounting. He could feel the weight of generations pressing upon him, their disdain palpable. They urged him to reconsider, reminding him of the legacy he bore. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, drop a like. It really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As he stood amid the chaos at a lavish family event, surrounded by all that wealth and privilege, he felt a crack forming in the facade he once valued so highly. Should he stand firm? Would he dare to fight for the only woman who saw him beyond his bank account? The crowd's murmurs seeped into his consciousness, painting a vivid picture of his own internal strife. They were right there on the edge of everything they had wished for, but the reality of their dreams threatened to slip through their fingers as misunderstandings piled up. Would Craig finally find the courage to step out from behind his family's shadow and embrace a love that challenged the very fabric of his world? The question hung heavy in the air, urging readers to turn the page, to witness what would happen next in their story. Craig's heart raced. The ballroom was alive with laughter and clinking glasses, but his mind was a tempest. He glanced through the crowd, searching for Anna, longing for her presence to ground him amidst the swirl of gilded chaos. How could he face his family, the very ones who had shaped him into the man he was? Would he concede to their demands, or carve out his own path? He caught a glimpse of Anna behind the heavy drapes, her face a mix of fear and determination. She shouldn't be there, not in that moment, not in a place filled with judgment and disdain. But there she was, a beacon of hope in a world that felt increasingly dark. "Craig," his mother's voice cut through his thoughts like a knife. She advanced toward him, her face a tight mask of disapproval. "You need to speak with your father. This nonsense can't go on. You know better." The hurt in her eyes stung. His mother had always been the epitome of grace, but pride had overshadowed her love. "Mom, please, it's not nonsense, it's real." He felt the words burst forth, unable to contain the truth any longer. She recoiled slightly, as if he had struck her. "Real? A maid? You're throwing your future away for—" "I'm choosing my future. I could have everything handed to me, but without Anna, it feels empty," he argued back, his discipline slipping away. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. "Look, I know this seems impossible," he softened, shifting his tone to something almost vulnerable. "But she makes me better. Can't you see that?" The room felt suffocating. The eyes of his peers bored into him, some watching with curiosity, others with judgment. They were all waiting, hanging on his next move.
Would he stand up for the woman he loved, or retreat into the safe embrace of his family's expectations? His father approached, the patriarch with an air of authority that often instilled fear. "Craig," he said, voice low and commanding, "this is madness. The Johnson name carries weight, and you must think of your legacy." Craig's heart sank. The weight of generations bore down on him like an anchor, but he had a choice to make. "No, Dad, you don't get it. It's about finding my own legacy, one that's built on love and integrity, not just wealth." His father's expression hardened, surprise flickering momentarily before it was replaced by a steely resolve. But behind him, Craig caught a glimpse of Anna stepping further from the shadows. Her eyes were wide, sparkling with unshed tears. In that moment, something shifted inside Craig. He stepped closer to her, their gazes locking. The room fell silent. "Anna," he said softly, reaching for her hand. "Will you marry me?" Gasps echoed throughout the ballroom. 100 faces reacted, pouring judgment, skepticism, and disbelief. Yet in Anna's eyes, he found acceptance. A smile broke through her worry, slowly illuminating her features. "Yes," she whispered. And in that simple word, a roar of angry murmurs erupted from the crowd. Craig's heart swelled with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The battle had begun, but rather than dread, all he felt was a spark of hope. They were on the precipice of a transformation that would change everything. As the crowd erupted in chaos, a figure in the back, hidden from view, narrowed their eyes, watching with a sinister interest. What they didn't know was that not all battles were fought in the open. Craig and Anna had allies ready to defy the odds, but they also had enemies, ones who wouldn't go down without a fight. Would their love be strong enough to withstand the looming storm? As they stood hand in hand, Craig felt the first tremors of their upcoming struggle. The real journey was just beginning. The chaos in the ballroom swirled around them, but Craig felt like he and Anna were encased in glass, separate from the anger and disbelief of their families. He squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin against his. It was a bold move, one that could shatter expectations and set off a chain reaction he could only imagine. "What have we done?" Anna whispered, her voice shaky but edged with a thrill that mirrored his own. "We've made a choice," he replied, his heart hammering in his chest. "Our choice." As they stood together, the murmurings of the crowd shifted like quicksand beneath their feet. The whispers grew louder, tinged with disbelief. Craig's family, once pillars of support, were morphing into strangers, their faces twisted with scorn. 10 seconds in and you're already ruining everything," Craig's cousin shouted from the crowd, laughter ringing sharp through the stained glass windows. "Shut up!"
Craig shot back, but the vigor in his voice was weak, swallowed by the cacophony. All around him, his family leaned in, eyes wide with shock, as if they were watching a train derail in slow motion. Anna's brows furrowed slightly, and the sparkle in her eyes dimmed. "Maybe we should—" "No," Craig interrupted, stepping closer to her, pushing back against the tide of disapproval. "We're not going to run. This is where we take our stand." His voice held conviction, enough that it turned a few heads, and the murmurs stuttered to a stop. The crowd was still, but the air was thick with tension. "Craig, think this through," his mother's voice rang out again, laced with desperation. "You don't understand the consequences." "Consequences?" he echoed, his tone escalating. "What about the consequences of a life lived in fear? You want me to settle into a life that doesn't feel right? I refuse to live that way. I refuse to betray what I feel."
Anna's hand tightened around his, and her grip was a promise of loyalty and strength, a silent acknowledgement of the uncertainty ahead. "Enough!" Craig's father finally bellowed, commanding and imperious. "This is no place for your childish antics. You're a Johnson." Craig's heart plummeted. It was a reminder of the weight he had carried all his life, but for the first time, he felt like rejecting it. "I may be a Johnson, but being one doesn't mean I have to live your dreams. I have my own." At that moment, he could see the path ahead, foggy but lit by the spark of their love. It wouldn't be easy, and shadows of their loved ones and society loomed heavily over them, but he felt ready for the storm. The crowd erupted again, voices rising, quickening into chaos, while he watched the reaction that filtered through: shock, anger, and some hopeful glances. Then an unexpected interjection came from the back of the room, silencing even the loudest critics. "He's right!" It was one of Craig's older friends, a successful entrepreneur known for breaking molds. "Craig's future can't be decided by tradition alone. Love is our greatest legacy." Craig and Anna locked eyes, surprise washing over them. In that instant, support flickered where they had once only seen hostility. Could they really stand united against generations of expectations? Would their love turn the tide or become the catalyst for chaos? Craig's mind raced with the possibilities, but deep down, he knew this was the first ripple in a wave of change that would affect them all. But before he could consider what that support meant for them, the figure in the shadows shifted, their expression darkening further. This fight was far from over, and Craig realized they would have to brace for the fallout. A storm was brewing, and nothing would remain untouched. As voices murmured and tensions mounted, he turned back to Anna, realizing that the biggest battle was yet to come. Did they have what it took to fight together as one united front, or would the pressure tear them apart? The night was heavy with uncertainty, but he vowed he wouldn't back down. The real questions loomed ahead, and Craig felt them like yawning chasms beneath his feet. Just how far would they need to go to stay true to themselves? How far would he go to protect Anna? The silence that followed Craig's declaration hung in the air like the calm before a storm. In the depths of his mind, thoughts tangled. He could feel the weight of his family's expectations crashing down on him. Yet, at the same time, an exhilarating sense of liberation surged through him. He glanced sideways at Anna, her face a mixture of fear and determination. They were standing at the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into the unknown together. The murmurs began again, this time swirling around Anna as if she were being scrutinized under a spotlight. "What right does she have to?" someone sneered from the back. Craig tightened his hold on Anna's hand, his heart racing. He knew all too well what was at stake, not just for him, but for her as well. "Listen," Craig shouted, his voice breaking through the noise. "What we feel for each other is real. It's not a game or a phase. This is our life." Every word echoed against the ornate high ceilings, commanding attention. His mother's eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and hurt etched across her features. Anna's shoulders stiffened, a flicker of sadness washing over her. "I didn't mean to drag you into this," she murmured, her confidence faltering just as the crowd pressed in. Craig saw the doubt creeping into her expression, threatening to pull her back. "You haven't dragged me into anything. This is my choice." He stepped closer, his voice steady now, firm. "I won't let anyone's whispers force us into a box we don't belong in." His words rippled through the onlookers. Some leaned in, intrigued. Others folded their arms, judgment clouding their eyes. He could feel the tension shift as curiosity and discomfort battled for dominance. But one person stood out in the crowd. His grandfather, a man whose approval had always felt like an honor, was staring at him, his expression unreadable. "What's this about love?" Craig's grandfather finally broke his silence. "The world is driven by responsibility. You need to understand." "Love is responsibility," Craig shot back, feeling the fire burning within him. "It's not just duty. It's about being honest, honoring what we truly want, who we truly are. I know that now." "You're throwing away your future for a girl who," some relative barked, cutting him off. But he wasn't going to let them dismiss her anymore. "She's not just a girl. Anna is everything to me. She's smart, strong, and fierce. Don't you dare undervalue her just because you can't see her worth." Craig's voice cracked with emotion, the edge of desperation sharpening his tone. Anna's eyes glimmered with unshed tears, and in that moment, he could see how vulnerable she felt. exposed and unshackled by the weight of expectations. Something shifted in the room. Suddenly, a young woman stepped forward from Craig's family, an unexpected ally. She was a distant cousin, known for her rebellious spirit. "Craig is right," she shouted, her voice unwavering. "We're not living in the past. I commend you both for standing up for your love. We need to embrace change." With those words, the tide began to turn. Some began to murmur in support, while others looked taken aback, as if the earth beneath them had shifted. Craig felt a surge of hope in his chest. Could this really work? Could they actually rally support? But the hesitation lingered, a reminder that resistance was still simmering just below the surface. As the crowd began to discuss among themselves, a shadow flickered at the edge of Craig's vision. It was his mother, determination set in her jaw. "Don't think you've won anything yet," she called. "There are consequences for your choices. We are a family, and this isn't over." The tension flared, igniting Craig's thoughts again. What was left unsaid? Where would the battle lead them next? Even as encouragement began to blossom around them, Craig felt the weight of their journey crash over him once again. Would they be able to face the fallout together? Could they truly change the narrative written for them? As support wavered beside dissent, Craig turned to Anna, ready to confront whatever the future held. "And if you stand with me," his voice trembled with purpose, "then we'll find a way to make this right." He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the unfolding storm as the world around them buzzed, suspended between acceptance and rebellion. The horizon was unclear, but one thing was certain: this was only the beginning. As Craig prepared for the inevitable clash that lay ahead, uncertainty weighed heavily against the flicker of hope. What would he have to sacrifice to protect this love? Craig felt as if the ground beneath him had turned to quicksand. Each supportive murmur from the crowd lifted him a little higher, only to be yanked back down by his mother's relentless glare. He squeezed Anna's hand tighter, feeling the warmth of her skin grounding him, reminding him of the choice before them. "Craig," Anna whispered, her voice barely perceptible beneath the hum of conversation. "What if they never accept us?" Her eyes were wide, searching his for reassurance, and he could feel a knot tightening in his chest. "They will," he insisted, though he wasn't sure if he believed it. The fear of rejection gnawed at him, but the spark he saw in Anna's gaze reignited his determination. This was more than a declaration. It was a fight for their very right to love. In that moment, Craig's grandfather took a step forward.
"You're speaking of love as if it's all there is, but love comes with responsibilities, Craig," he said, his tone heavy with authority. "It's about legacy, family, and—" "Maybe we need to redefine legacy," Craig interrupted, his voice rising. The room grew still again, this time ensnared by the intensity of his words. "What if our legacy is not defined by old expectations? What if it's about creating something new, something authentic?" Someone scoffed, and Craig noticed a few family members shaking their heads. He pulled Anna closer, the confidence in his heart swelling once more. "I don't want to live a life dictated by the past. I want to build a life with Anna, filled with honesty. Let's honor what really matters." His grandfather narrowed his eyes, but a flicker of recognition passed through them, as if Craig's words had cracked through his well-guarded armor. The crowd was alive with whispers again. The air crackled with potential as people began to shift in their seats and reconsider their stance. Suddenly, a voice from the far side of the room chimed in. "They're right." It was Craig's younger sister, Sophie, stepping into the light. The once uncertain girl now stood strong, illuminating the room with her unexpected heart. "Love is worth fighting for. We shouldn't let anyone tell us what to feel." That single declaration changed everything. A few family members nodded in agreement, and Craig felt the room pulse with newfound energy. It was as if in that moment, walls began to come down, allowing fresh air to seep in. Hope breathed life into a stagnant discussion, and Craig felt his chest swell with pride for Anna, for Sophie, for the love they all embraced. But even amid the shifting tides, Craig's mother's voice surged above the others, sharper than before. "Your love may well be real, but love doesn't pay the bills, and it certainly doesn't secure your future. You're risking everything for a fantasy." Craig's heart dropped at her words. "Is that what you think? That our love is a fantasy?" he shot back, eyes blazing. "If I have to choose between my family's fortune and my love for Anna, I'll choose her every time. I refuse to put a price on happiness."
Anna stood beside him, her breath quickening. She had never intended to pull him into such a storm, and yet here they were. "I don't want to tear your family apart," she said softly, but he could see the fire in her eyes. "You're not tearing anything apart," he reassured her, his voice resolute. "We're daring to rebuild it, together. Will you stand with me?" As she nodded, Craig felt a surge of courage. Together, beneath the growing uncertainty, they offered each other strength. The future felt precarious, but for the first time, it also felt within reach. But just as Craig began to relish the shift in the atmosphere, his mother lurched forward, her face a mask of frustration. "You think this is a game? You're about to find out there are consequences to your choices."
As her warning echoed in the charged room, Craig couldn't shake the feeling that even greater storms lay ahead. Would love truly be enough to weather them? Would his family's acceptance eventually bloom from the seeds of their rebellion? With uncertainty looming, Craig turned to Anna, searching her face for reassurance. The answer lay ahead, tangled in the reality of their choices. What would they have to face next? The tension in the room tightened like a coiled spring as Craig's mother's warning sank in. Her eyes flashed with a mix of anger and disappointment, and for a brief moment, Craig felt a chill creep into his heart. The enormity of his choice weighed heavily on him. Was he really ready to face the consequences? Did he have the strength to walk this path with Anna and not look back? Anna squeezed his hand again, grounding him. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together, right?" Her voice was steady, a soft anchor among the chaos. At that moment, Craig could see the young woman he fell in love with so fiercely, a fighter standing beside him. "Together," he affirmed, his voice barely above a whisper, but filled with conviction. Sophie stepped forward again, the fire in her words igniting the crowd once more. "You'll regret not supporting them. Love is all that matters. Don't you see how brave they are?" The old family traditions were crumbling before their very eyes. Craig's mother took a shaky breath, eyes darting among the divided crowd. Some looked troubled, their expressions reflecting disbelief, while others seemed intrigued, contemplating this new idea of legacy. "Love is a beautiful thing, Sophie," his mother finally said, her voice losing some of its edge as it mingled with uncertainty. "But love alone can't feed you or provide for a family. The world doesn't work that way." "That's where you're wrong," Craig interjected, realizing he had to change the narrative, not only for his love, but for the future he envisioned. Love is the foundation upon which everything else can be built. A stable life comes from strong relationships, not just financial wealth. "This isn't just your life, Craig," his mother countered, her frustration boiling through again. "You have responsibilities, expectations to uphold. Think of your future." Craig could feel his heart race. Did his future really have to be static and predetermined? "I am thinking of my future," he countered, shaking with passion. "And it's not one without Anna by my side. We're capable of creating a life far better than you can imagine." As silence cloaked the crowd, Craig felt a flicker of hope. The room seemed to tip in their favor, even as uncertainty loomed, snaking like a shadow just behind his resolve. Then, just as he gathered steam, his grandfather stepped in again, his voice calm yet weighty. "Life will test you, Craig. You'll need courage for what lies ahead. But sometimes you must listen to those who've walked before you." Before Craig could respond, Anna spoke up, her voice steady but laced with vulnerability. "It's not about ignoring your guidance, sir. It's about creating our own path. We can't keep living under the shadows of expectations that don't fit us." The tension in the room shifted, allowing a few heads to nod in approval. Craig's heart raced as he caught glimpses of acceptance mixed with doubt. He wondered what it might take to break down the barriers completely. "Craig," Anna said, breaking through his whirlwind of thoughts, "if we do this, really commit, what do you think will happen with your family?" "I don't know," he admitted, his voice quieting. "But I know I can't hide from who I am anymore. I have to stand for our love, no matter what." His mother's expression softened ever so slightly, as if something was beginning to sink in. But from the corner of the room, a familiar figure stirred, a cousin Craig hadn't seen in ages, now leaning forward. "You think that love conquers all? What if it tears everything apart?" With that, the real battle commenced. Craig took a step forward, facing the unknown, the crowd's anticipation crackling like electricity. Love was only one part of this journey, but would his determination be enough to sway the hearts tightly woven into tradition? With the air heavy with questions, Craig glanced at Anna, her expression mirroring his uncertainty.
What would he have to sacrifice to keep them together? And could love alone defy the family legacy that loomed above them? Love isn't some fairy tale, Craig. His cousin's voice cut through the thick air, drawing the crowd's attention back like moths to a flame. Craig clenched his fists, stifling the urge to lash out. You've got to think about the reality of life. What you two want, it's just not feasible. The murmurs that spread through the crowd felt like daggers aimed at his heart. He could practically feel their doubts wrapping around him, squeezing tighter with every harsh word spoken. But then he glanced at Anna. Her eyes shone with unwavering faith in him, and it was as if she breathed life back into his resolve. Feasible? Craig's voice rose, sharp and unwavering. What good is a life built on practicality if it's devoid of love? I refuse to let fear dictate my choices. I won't let expectations trap me in a life where I'm unhappy. With every word, he felt the ground shifting beneath him. There was a thin line between passion and panic, and he danced along that edge. The faces staring back at him reflected disbelief, concern, but also an unmistakable flicker of intrigue. Anna took a step forward, her presence fierce and solid at his side. We may not have everything figured out, but we have each other. Love gives us strength, and together we can face whatever comes our way. Your traditions, they don't define us. We can redefine what family means. The room buzzed with a mixture of emotions. A distant voice broke through. But what about the consequences?
It wasn't, Uncle, his head shaking almost imperceptibly. What about the family's legacy? Legacy? Craig echoed, disbelief coloring his tone. Isn't it time for a new legacy? One that celebrates love over lineage? I want my children to know their parents fought for what they believed in, to be proud of that fight. At that moment, he caught a glimpse of his mother's face. Her expression was softer than before. Her steel exterior cracked just a little. Craig continued, urgency fueling his words. None of you understand how this feels. This is not just about me or Anna. This is about choosing love over fear, about living a life that means something. What's the point of this legacy if it's built on compromise? He wanted to shake them all, wrench their minds open to see the truth that pulsed at the heart of his words. Would they ever understand how utterly terrifying it was to be this exposed, to lay his soul bare in this chamber heavy with expectation? His grandfather rested a hand on Craig's shoulder, grounding him in ways that felt both reassuring and stifling. I understand what you're trying to say, son. But please, Craig interrupted, heart racing. Don't hold back. I need to know. Do you believe it's possible? A heavy silence fell, the tension stretched taut as a rubber band ready to snap. Craig locked eyes with Anna, and in that moment, he realized the power of their unified front, even in the face of uncertainty. Tell me one thing, he said, voice steady. Is it worth pursuing the kind of love that could change everything? Or are you willing to settle for a life that's always what's expected? He held his breath, watching as the reaction spread across the gathered family. It was a moment suspended in time, the air thick with unspoken questions and possibilities. A flicker of determination shone in his mother's gaze, a slow thaw against the chill that had rooted her in tradition. Was it really happening? Could they possibly see what he saw? But before anyone could answer, tension shifted again. A loud crash echoed from the back of the room, drawing every eye. The door slammed open, revealing a figure ominously familiar. Craig's heart dropped. Would this newcomer bring support, or would their return send the situation spiraling out of control? All eyes turned, anticipation electric in the air. What new twist would unfold, shaking the very foundations they'd just begun to build? The figure in the doorway was none other than Marcus, Craig's estranged brother. The silence cracked like glass, tension slicing through the room. Craig's heart raced. This was the last person he expected to see, and the very last person he wanted here right now. Marcus strode in with an air of confidence, his perfectly styled hair reflecting his high society upbringing. Dressed in designer clothes, he looked every bit the part of the wealthy golden boy. But there was something unsettling in his smile as his eyes flitted around the room, taking in the assembled family. "What's all this fuss about?" Marcus asked, his tone casual, as if he had walked into a simple family gathering rather than a confrontation charged with emotion. His gaze landed on Craig, lit with a mix of amusement and challenge. "Thought you were going to stick to your quiet little life, bro." Craig felt the heat of anger rising within him. How could Marcus play the part of the outsider so effortlessly? He refused to let his brother's presence undermine his moment. This was his fight, not Marcus's. "Why are you here?" Craig shot back, his voice steadier than he felt. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, studying Craig like he was a puzzle to solve. "I heard you've been making declarations worthy of a soap opera. Thought I'd come see how far you've spiraled into insanity." Anna shifted beside Craig, an uncomfortable expression crossing her face. He was grateful for her presence, but Marcus's dig struck deep. It was a reminder of everything Craig was fighting against: the expectations, the judgment, the fear of ridicule. "Stick around, you might learn something," Anna responded, her voice firm. Craig admired her for stepping up, ready to battle alongside him. The room buzzed again, whispers scattering like leaves in the wind. Craig could see confusion in some faces. Others were expressions of intrigue. Did they really think this was a performance? This was his life. Everything he felt was real, and he refused to let Marcus diminish it. Marcus rolled his eyes. "What's the big deal with love, anyway? It fades, Craig, you know that. You can't eat love. You can't pay the bills with it." A fresh surge of outrage washed over Craig. "But you can live with it," he shot back, voice booming. "You're so caught up in wealth and power that you've forgotten what really matters. Love is what gives life its meaning." "Romantic notions won't pay your mortgage, little brother," he replied, a cocky smile creeping back onto his face. "Why not take a seat at the grown-up table instead of chasing fairy tales?" Craig's fists clenched tighter. How could Marcus be so cold? Craig could feel the weight of every disapproving gaze in the room on him again, but then he locked eyes with Anna. Her unwavering faith seemed to infuse him with clarity. "I'd rather live a life filled with love and struggle," he declared, turning vulnerable but resolute, "than one filled with riches and emptiness. If that's a fairy tale, then so be it, but it's a fairy tale I'm willing to fight for." Marcus stood in stunned silence, momentarily disarmed, but it quickly turned back to amusement, like a predator circling its prey. Craig swallowed hard, fear gnawing at him. How could he ever prove this wasn't just a dream? He glanced at his mom again. Would she back his decision? Did she believe too?
But as he searched her eyes, doubt crept in like a shadow. The stakes felt impossibly high, and he knew Marcus wouldn't stop here. He had to prepare for the battle ahead. Just then, his grandfather moved forward, voice raised with authority. "Enough!" There was electricity in the air as the tension escalated, and Craig could sense that Marcus was merely the beginning of a much larger conflict. What would it mean for their family? For Anya? For him? Could he possibly withstand the weight of Marcus's mockery while staying true to the love he cherished? Would anyone ever truly understand what he was willing to risk for happiness? The room felt charged, breaths held in anticipation as the family watched the sibling showdown unfold. But deep down, Craig felt something shifting within him. This wasn't just about love anymore. It was about standing firm in the face of fear. And as he took a breath, ready for the coming storm, he wondered, how far could he go before everything he ever wanted slipped through his fingers? Craig stood tall, heart racing, as the weight of the moment settled heavily on his shoulders. He could feel the air thick with anticipation, the cautious glances from his family like blades against his resolve. He was still grappling with his grandfather's authority looming over them, and Marcus's laughter echoing in his mind, mocking and persistent. "I said, 'Enough,'" his grandfather boomed again, cutting through the tension. The elderly man stepped forward, eyes sharp, as he grappled with the fragile peace in the room. "This isn't a game, Marcus. You've already disrupted what was supposed to be a serious conversation." Marcus pushed away from the doorframe, posture relaxed as he shrugged. "But it's so much more fun when I shake things up." His smile was infuriatingly smug, a mask hiding something darker beneath. It was a reminder of how different they were, not just in life choices, but in understanding the world around them. Craig felt like a marionette in the midst of someone else's play. Everyone else in the room stood at the edge of the stage, intrigued, waiting for his response. What did they think? Was this another performance? His heart collided with frustration. He was tired of playing someone else's part. A soft squeeze on his hand broke through his thoughts. Anya. Her gentle encouragement felt like a lifeline. He turned to her, drawing strength from the steady warmth of her presence. She nodded, eyes shining with unwavering belief, and it was enough to reignite his fire. "Marcus, you may think this is funny," Craig began, his voice low but steady. "But you don't get it. It's not a performance. I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not for the sake of your approval or anyone else's." "No one asked you for theatrics, Craig," Marcus countered, smirk still plastered on his face. "But we all see through the facade. You're just making a mess of your life."
A collective gasp rippled through the family, and Craig felt the heat creeping back into his cheeks. Yet this time it was different. It fueled rather than deterred him.
If living a life rooted in love, honesty, and authenticity makes me a mess, then I'll embrace every single crisis that comes with it." There was a beat of silence, as if time itself paused to absorb his words. The room felt electric, charged with swirling emotions that danced between anger, fear, and a hint of admiration. Craig glanced at the faces surrounding him, searching for an ally in this chaos. Marcus, however, was relentless, an unstoppable force determined to drive a wedge between him and the truth. "And what happens when that love fails you, huh? When it all comes crashing down around you?" "Then I'll be damned if I don't get back up again," Craig declared, his voice unwavering. "Love doesn't guarantee perfection, but it's worth every stumble. It's worth everything." His grandfather cleared his throat, as if to bring order back to the table. "Love is powerful, Craig, but so is reality. You need to consider what lies ahead." Craig felt his chest tighten. This was it. His grandfather ventured into risky territory, trying to direct him back to the path of safety. But he already teetered too close to the edge of that cliff. He could either retreat or leap. "I know reality all too well," Craig replied, voice firm. "And I won't retreat. I refuse to run from what matters most." Not by Marcus's voice, not by anyone's. The weight of that declaration hung thick in the air, raw and humbling. Family dynamics swirled around the room, a tapestry woven from years of history, love, and pain. Still, Craig heard the steady rhythm of his heart, pounding stronger than fear. "Let them talk," he thought fiercely. "Let them mock. I'll wear that armor of love, and I'll face the storm." But as he fused the resolve from deep within him, a sharp thought sliced through his clarity. What would the aftermath be? Would his family truly stand by him, or would this moment shatter everything they'd built? A shiver of uncertainty passed through him as he turned back to Marcus. Anger still flickered in those piercing eyes, but Craig could feel the tide beginning to change. Just a small shift, yet it loomed large. What would happen if he bore the brunt of their scrutiny? Could he really be brave enough to embrace the reality of his choices before it all came crashing down? He felt the stakes rise, and with it, the weight of destiny began to tip. Standing on the precipice of everything he held dear, he realized the fight was just beginning. But could he summon the courage needed to carve a new legacy for himself, despite the fear of rejection? As silence enveloped the room, he took a deep breath. Would this family ever understand the depth of his heart? Would they support him through the chaos, or would he face it alone? The path ahead loomed uncertain, the struggle both daunting and exhilarating. As he met Marcus's gaze once more, a thought struck dangerously deep. What if love was only the beginning? The silence that enveloped the room felt heavy, like a thick fog that obscured the path ahead. But amidst the uncertainty, Craig stood firm, heart pounding with the unwavering beat of determination. This was the moment where choices rippled out in waves that could change everything. "Craig," his grandfather's voice broke through the tension again, softer this time. "You have to consider how this will affect everyone. Your decisions will shape not just your life, but the lives of those who care about you." "I understand that, but I can't lead a life based on everyone else's expectations," Craig replied, fighting the urge to glance at Anna. He could almost feel the warmth of her support radiating through him. "The love I have for Anna is worth fighting for. Isn't that what life is about? Choosing happiness over comfort?" Marcus scoffed, clearly savoring the chaos unfolding before him. "And what happens when this fairy tale of yours becomes a nightmare? Love won't pay the bills, and it sure as hell won't fix a shattered reality." "No," Craig shot back, feeling the weight of each word. "But love creates a foundation strong enough to build a life upon. I refuse to let this family's legacy dictate my happiness. If that means I risk it all, then so be it." His mother's lips pressed into a thin line, eyes flickering with a storm of emotions. Craig's heart ached at the thought of disappointing her, but he held that feeling close, not as a burden, but as a reminder of exactly who he was fighting for. "Anna deserves to be treated as my equal," he added, his voice gaining momentum. "Not someone to be looked down on because of her position. She lifts me up in ways I never thought possible. I won't sacrifice my happiness, and I won't let anyone else dictate my worth." The crowd began to murmur, the energy shifting towards something akin to understanding, or at least curiosity. Could they actually see him? Could they comprehend the passion that surged within him for Anna? His grandfather nodded slightly, an acknowledgement that seemed to reverberate through the room. "People often overlook the sacrifices love requires," he said,
a hint of wisdom lacing his voice. "But it takes more than passion to make it through the storms that life will summon. Are you prepared for the fallout?" "Guide us," Anna spoke up, her voice steadier than Craig had heard it before. "We will learn as we go. If things get tough, we can tackle it together." Craig's heart swelled as he turned to her, disbelief intermingled with joy. She was right. Together they would discover their path, and they wouldn't back down. His mother's face flickered with something that resembled acceptance, the harsh lines of disapproval softening ever so slightly. "That's all well and good," Marcus retorted, clearly frustrated. "This is reality."
You think some fairy tale ending is just going to show up because you say it? You could ruin everything for yourself and her. But Craig felt the tide turning like a wave in his favor. Or I could create a new legacy, a legacy based on love, understanding, and a commitment to breaking free from old expectations. One where Anna and I stand together as partners. And at that moment, he knew. It wasn't just his parents' legacy on the line. It was the entire family's perception of love, prioritizing wealth over happiness. The truth simmered beneath the surface, waiting to erupt. His support did come, fluttering in the form of whispers that rose like a crescendo in the air. Craig saw heads nodding, some with apprehension, others with curiosity. If they choose to reject us, Craig thought, then they misunderstand what love means. Craig took a deep breath, letting the air fill him, the thrill of hope running wild in his veins. Love requires sacrifice, but it also creates a bond unbreakable by time or wealth. I choose to honor that bond, to invest in a future I can believe in. Anna took his hand, and the warmth filled him with confidence. With these hands, we'll build something from our dreams. There will be ups and downs, but I'm committed to making it work. This time, when he emphasized together, the room felt charged, crackling with unspoken affirmations. The whispers grew louder, mingling with Craig's steady resolve. "Maybe," his grandfather stated, a wistful glint appearing in his eyes, "you may be onto something after all. Authenticity in love is a rare treasure. It's just sad that we only recognize its value when it's threatened." A ripple of emotion wove through the crowd then, unexpected and powerful. Was it possible? Could they embrace a new perspective, be part of a transformation? Craig's heart quickened. Now is the time to start. As they looked around, he saw the generations of expectation begin to loosen their grip, giving way to uncertainties, fears, and perhaps, just perhaps, understanding. Let us redefine what it means to be a Johnson. Let us show that love can elevate us all. As their voices rose together in support, Craig turned to Marcus. He could see the disbelief in Marcus's expression. Perhaps they were cut from different cloths, but within that moment, Craig realized he wouldn't have to fight alone. Their legacy wouldn't be without challenges, but Craig glanced back at Anna, her face illuminated by the hope they'd ignited. Love had the power to change lives, and together they would champion a transformation that embraced love in all its forms. In that instant, as voices began to unify around him, Craig felt the first stirrings of belief. They would weather whatever storms came next, because he had Anna at his side, and their love would guide the way. As the murmurs turned to affirmations of support, Craig knew that this was not the end of their journey. It was merely the beginning. They were on the threshold of something beautiful, a love that would stand against tradition, bold and free. All around them, laughter and encouragement began to fill the space, rising like a tide to drown out old ideologies. Craig felt it swell within him, a heart full of love, resilience, and pure defiance of everything that had tried to hold him back. Love was alive, and it wanted to flourish. So, stand up if you want to fight for your happiness, and let's reshape our legacies together. And hey, if you connected with this story, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for more transformational tales. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. It matters. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see love triumph. Let's light up the world with our stories.